You're listening to The Phillip Jordan Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Phillip Jordan Show. I'm your host, Phillip Jordan from Last Word on College Football and 96.9 The Legend, where I'm the in-studio host and producer for Death and Wolves Football. Welcome into today's show. Got a fun show for you guys today. We're going to jump into the National Football League today, talk about what I think was the best game on Sunday. We're going to talk Titans, Chargers with Mike Herndon from paulkaharski.com, where he's a columnist and podcast host of the podcast Football and Other F Words. He talks all things Titans. Good 20 minutes breaking down the Titans game against the Chargers, where the Titans are at 1-1, and look ahead to their matchup this weekend against the Cleveland Browns. And I will open on what is wrong with Alabama. But before we do all that, let you guys know you can find me in the podcast. Find me on social media at PJordanSEC. Podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you just leave 4 stars, you are a straight-up hater. You can also check out the show over at the 4-Star Sports Media Network. So go check it out over there. You can watch on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, all notifications, and please leave a comment on the video, and I'll read it on a future edition of the show. You can always email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. So what is wrong with Alabama? That's a question a lot of people are asking right now, coming off the 17-3 victory for Alabama over South Florida. Going to that game, I thought, as many did, after the disappointing loss against Texas, okay, Alabama is going to make an example out of South Florida. And that didn't happen. South Florida leads this game 3-0 at halftime. And going in, Tyler Buchner was making his first start and very ineffective in the game. He was 5 of 14 in the game for 34 yards, 2.4 average on his passing. There were some short passes he missed. He missed a screen pass. He was short on the running back. He just looked out of sorts. And then Ty Simpson comes in second game, 5 of 9, 73 yards, no touchdowns. But he did some better things. But another thing with Alabama, though, I mean, we can look at the quarterbacks, and I'll get into Jalen Milroe here in a second. It doesn't matter with who's back there quarterback. Alabama's biggest problem offensively right now is they cannot pass protect. The run protection is pretty good. The run blocking, I must say, is pretty good. Rodell Williams had 129. Jace McClellan had 74 yards, and the total of the team had 203 yards. So the run game is there. It's working. But the pass game is not, because they can't protect the quarterback. And Jalen Milroe didn't play in this game. And a lot of people I've seen, and I've said this plenty of times, looked at the game against Texas, and some people put that on Jalen Milroe. I don't think that was all Jalen Milroe's fault. Again, the pass protection. And yes, he threw the 2 bad interceptions. We've gone over that. They were bad passes, and they contributed to Alabama losing. But he's not the biggest issue. And when I watched these 2 quarterbacks play, like I said, Ty Simpson made some nice throws, but he's not ready. You can see it. And Tyler Buchner just was not good. Jalen Milroe should be the quarterback for Alabama. He gives them the best chance to win just because of his pure athletic ability. And let's try to see if we can develop a quarterback. But Alabama needs to stop trying to throw the ball also. They need Tommy Rees, whoever's making that call, Nick Saban, they need to say, okay, we need to just line up and run the ball. That's going to be our strength, and then go off and play action. Defensively, Alabama should be good, but there's just a lot of issues with this team, and the offense is not good. And I kind of do wonder how many Alabama fans will say, you know what, maybe Bill O'Brien wasn't that bad. And we look at Alabama, they don't bully you anymore. You can bully them to a degree now up front, and that's the problem. And, before Alabama lined up and they just ran the ball down your throat, they doesn't necessarily do that anymore. Of course, they made that decision. When Lane Kiffin come in, you bring in Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young, you become more of a passing team, and you got away from what you were being a physical football team. And we see that's what Georgia is on the other side. And I thought going with Tommy Rees, Alabama was trying to replicate that. So there's some issues there. The receivers do need to step up, but they're not the biggest issue. I'm going to tie it all back to that offensive line. They play Ole Miss this week, and everybody's going to be talking about how Alabama's down. They're not the same team. Can Ole Miss beat them? And you know what that is, Nick Saban? That's rat poison. And he can use that rat poison to his advantage. So a lot of people out there are probably going to pick Ole Miss, are going to want to go with that trendy upset pick. I went on the show in Columbus, and I said this. I think Alabama wins this game by double digits. Alabama's going to show us who they really are. They're going to remind us who they are this Saturday. But they may win that game, but that doesn't erase the problems. And this Alabama team is just, they're not a playoff team. They're not a championship team. Now, Tennessee coming in Tuscaloosa doesn't look as daunting because what Tennessee did against Florida, or what they didn't do against Florida on Saturday night. But LSU coming to Tuscaloosa, after what we saw them do to Mississippi State, and with that offense clicking on all cylinders, they're dangerous. That's proving how good Florida State is and not how bad LSU was in that game. But LSU moved the ball all day on them. They just made mistakes in the red zone and didn't capitalize on some things. So that's going to be tough. So Alabama's got to really look in the mirror and decide who they are and what they want to be and what's the identity. I think it's running the ball and great defense. But we'll see this Saturday when they play Ole Miss and what that identity is going to be. All right, guys, now I am going to play my conversation I had earlier on Monday with Mike Herndon. He covers the Tennessee Titans, a columnist over at paulkaharski.com and host of the podcast, Football and Other F Words. Everybody joining me today on the podcast is Mike Herndon. You can check him out, columnist at paulkaharski.com, co-host of Football and Other F Words, covering the Tennessee Titans. And Mike, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about Titans. Interesting team. Always something interesting to talk about with them, particularly their quarterback. But coming off, and we're recording this middle of the day on Monday, coming out of that game, what was some kind of like initial thoughts, takeaways from the Titans' victory over the Chargers on Sunday after losing to the Saints the week before?
Yeah, it's one of those all of your big takeaways from week one almost got reversed, right? Like it's almost comical that Tannehill was absolutely dreadful against the Saints. With the 3 picks and several missed opportunities for touchdowns that would have swung that game in the Titans' favor. And then he turns around and comes back and just plays in one of his best games in the last couple years against the Chargers. 20 of 24 passing. He had the big chunk play to Treylon Burks, had a rushing touchdown thrown in there. And, of course, the go-ahead touchdown late to Nick Westbrook-Akine that ultimately the Chargers came and got the field goal, forcing overtime. But another comeback late fourth quarter drive by Ryan Tannehill, who's done that a surprisingly large amount of times since taking over as the Titans quarterback in 2019. So completely reverses the narrative on him. And then you also have guys like Sean Murphy-Bunting, who I thought played a poor game in New Orleans and then turned around and was arguably the Titans' best defensive player, not named Jeffrey Simmons, on the field on Sunday against the Chargers. I thought he had an excellent game, a couple pass breakups, some really nice coverage in spots against Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and those talented Chargers receivers. So it really kind of, you get one good and one bad, and you kind of got to see what the rest of the season will hold to figure out, which one was the illusion or if it's just kind of going to be a somewhere in between, which is probably the most likely result here.
Yeah, and this is something, too. This kind of game is something, if you're a Titans fan, you're kind of used to this, coming down to the wire. I mean, with Tannehill as a quarterback and Vrabel there as a head coach, that's kind of been the theme every week for them.
Absolutely. And, yeah, they tend to play a lot of close games, and Vrabel plays things close to his best, I think. They've tended to rely on their defense and running game, which is just going to naturally create tighter contests just because it shortens the game, keeps the score low and all that. And so it's been a lot of nail biters. But I will say that the Titans have had a knack for coming up with the plays that they need late, especially at home. I kind of harken back to the goal line stand in Tannehill's first start with the Titans against the Chargers in Nissan Stadium, and that drama at the end of the game. And the Titans have really played some incredibly exciting and just down to the wire football games in Nissan Stadium the last few years. I know Titans fans sometimes get frustrated with that they haven't won bigger than what they have, but man, they have certainly gotten some entertaining home games over the last few years since Vrabel took over.
Yeah, I was doing some reading on some articles after the game, and I saw one. It said under Mike Vrabel, they are 17-10 in games decided by 3 points or less. So they're good at this. They're good at these close games, as you said.
Yeah, I think they're good situationally, which I think is what this, what ultimately drives a lot of these close games. Who plays better situational football? Who's more composed and prepared for the moment? And I think Vrabel is a tremendous coach. For all of he's not perfect by any means. There's certainly some things about him that drive me nuts at times, but I think he is one of the 5 or 6 best coaches in the NFL right now, and I think he gets a lot out of this football team, even when they're not necessarily the most talented. And they definitely were not the most talented team on the field Sunday against the Chargers. That's kind of the opposite side of that coin. I feel like Brandon Staley gets the least out of the most in the NFL when it comes to coaching circles. So it was an interesting game. Ultimately, that matchup right there, Vrabel versus Staley, is why I picked the Titans to win this game on Football and Other F Words last week. And it came right down to it, and they proved me right this time, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, talking about this game and the Chargers, they were up 11-0. It was a little over 8 minutes left in the second quarter, and they were getting pressure on Tannehill. Tannehill got sacked 5 times in the game. Before the big play to Burkswood equaled a Derrick Henry touchdown, what were you seeing? What was kind of the Titans' issues offensively before that moment?
I think one of the big issues was they had put in Xavier Newman at left guard for Peter Skoronski, who, of course, had the appendectomy late last week that knocked him out for this game. And Newman, it was his first start, his first real extended NFL action, and he just looked overwhelmed, particularly next to Dillard, who has had his own struggles at left tackle, and that side was just getting overwhelmed, I felt like, particularly with stunts and games, and it makes some sense. You've got 2 guys who aren't used to playing next to each other, communicating for the first time, trying to pass off these twists that the Chargers were throwing at them, and they just really struggled with it. I felt like once Dylan Radins was inserted at left guard, I felt like things settled down almost immediately. And the Titans certainly over the last, 2.5 quarters of that game moved the ball much more effectively. They still had some issues with pressure and protection. I think Dillard's a real problem for this team, but it was better. And you would hope that when Skoronski returns that, maybe that continues to improve over on that left side so that they can, keep Tannehill upright. Because when he's upright, he seems to do pretty well, or at least he did in this game.
He did that. And then, of course, the big play that Treylon Burks, and this has got to be something that the Titans fans have been waiting for. They drafted him, the year prior in the draft, after they had trade away A.J. Brown, just that moment, that big play. And that really seemed like at that moment that really charged up the Titans, and offensively they really got things going the rest of the game.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's no doubt that lit a spark and was one of the turning points, kind of turning point moments of that entire game. And Burks, all offseason people have talked about, they've got to get a speed guy, they've got to get a deep threat. And all offseason I've been pretty adamant that, look, Treylon Burks is the deep threat. If you watched him at Arkansas, what he did was basically they used him on screens and vertical routes, and that was it. That was his entire arsenal that he was asked to perform, and he did it amazingly. He was one of the best deep ball receivers in college football, if not the best, during his time at Arkansas. And he may not be a 4.3 guy. And he's not. Like, we have the combine testing. He ran, I think, 4.55 or something like that. But play speed and the ability to get on top of a corner and beat you vertically, he's got that all day long. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in coming weeks from Burks as he, recovers from the knee injury that he had during training camp and gets, back into the swing of things a little bit more. I think he's going to be that deep threat, and that should open things up for guys like Chigakonkwo and DeAndre Hopkins kind of working in that intermediate route, intermediate zones of the defense. So I think Burks and his ability to make those big plays is a huge component moving forward for this offense. They absolutely have to have it. They have to have him. He's arguably their most important player on offense.
And, I saw this, and I saw you tweet it out or retweet it or repost it. Sorry. It's, you're still used to using that lingo with social media.
Oh, yeah.
But play action, and that was a case there. Off of play action, they hit the big play, and Tannehill 7-9 for 168 on the play action. And obviously when you've got a running back like Derrick Henry in the backfield, and then what they're doing with Tyjae Spears, the rookie as well, it's that threat, and they had a lot of big plays off of that on Sunday.
Absolutely, yeah. The play-action passing game is something that, when Arthur Smith here, the Titans were the absolute best in the NFL in the play-action passing game. And Titans, I think teams caught up to the Titans a little bit in that regard over the last couple of years. I don't think it was all just, Todd Downing got away from it. They had games where they ran it a bunch. It just wasn't as effective. But I think Tim Kelly seems to have gotten some of that magic working again, whether it be, the timing of when he calls it. And one thing that has stood out about Kelly so far, which is a big departure from Downing or really any of the predecessors at offensive coordinator since Vrabel took over, is that he's way more willing to attack on first down and go downfield with that play-action passing game. And that's a tendency breaker for the Titans. Obviously, last year, I think it was something like 60-65% run rate on first downs. It was just about, you could just about guarantee it that 1st and 10, they're going to turn and give it to Henry. And on the plays, on the series where they didn't give it to him on 1st and 10, they were for sure giving it to him on 2nd down. So I think we've seen Tim Kelly mix it up a little bit more, be a little less predictable in his play calling, and that's going to benefit the Titans, and it should benefit their play-action passing game because all the formula, all the ingredients is still there for them to be successful with that play-pass game. And I think it's just getting the timing and getting some of the wrinkles worked out. And hopefully, if they can do what they did against the Chargers on Sunday for consistently throughout the rest of the season, this could be a really fun offense to watch the rest of the way.
And what's been your take on the way they've been using running backs, Derrick Henry and Tyjae Spears, rotating them out? Sometimes they're both out there at the same time.
Yeah, it's really interesting because clearly they drafted Spears with this in mind, that they wanted to get into some of this stuff, and they're running a lot of the two-back look. I think they've run some really creative and interesting plays out of that package, and I'll be interested to see how much that really grows over the course of the season, because that is an interesting way, because Spears is just a matchup problem for a defense if you're going to put a linebacker out there. And both guys, both Henry and Spears, have shown a willingness to lead block for each other. And I thought the triple option look that they gave out of that set where Tannehill ended up keeping it and running it in for the touchdown in this past game, I thought that was a great design and something that's super interesting to me to watch them kind of track moving forward and even think projecting forward beyond this year, not that we need to get too wrapped up in future seasons, but a Malik Willis or a Will Levis running that kind of triple option look with Henry and Spears would be really fun to watch as well. So I love what they're doing with that set. Spears has been way more involved than even I thought he was, and I thought he was going to have a role, but I didn't expect him to be on the field this much on 1st and 2nd downs like he has been.
Yeah, that was cool to see with Tannehill in the triple option, and kind of brought back memories when he was at Texas A&M in college a long time ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, Spears is exciting from the standpoint of like he's already demonstrated to me that he is going to be able to do what he did in college at the NFL level. He has that rare kind of make you miss in a phone booth ability where he's just so quick with that stop-start acceleration. And it's such a different skill set than Derrick Henry that it's going to be fascinating to see how they balance the usage of those two guys. Because, I mean, Spears has been super productive when they've gotten the ball in his hands already this year. And I think he's going to have some massive games for them at times this season.
You know, just your thoughts overall on the defensive performance on Sunday against the Chargers, because there was a couple times like when Chargers went up 14-7, they had the big play to Keenan Allen, but the Titans defense tightened up, and then they forced him to kick a field goal. Then there at the end, Harold Landry with the sack to force a field goal that sent the game to overtime instead of letting the Chargers score a touchdown. I thought that was a big moment too as well, just getting it to overtime. But what was your thoughts on just how the Titans defense performed against the Chargers offense?
You know, I felt like it was kind of a little more of the same. The secondary still struggles. I thought they missed Amani Hooker a lot in this game. Elijah Molden was okay, but Amani Hooker is a really good playmaker for this defense from the safety position, and he is a very key piece for them. So I thought they missed him in this game. Obviously, they missed Christian Fulton, too, who, despite Fulton's issues staying on the field, when he's on the field, he's still their best corner to me. Although I will say that Roger McCreary has tightened the gap this year. He's played really good football these first two games. So I thought they gave up. They were still a little leaky on the back end. The passing game, hurt them at times, and Herbert seemed to have a lot of success, especially over the middle of the field. But the run defense is stellar as always. I don't think it would have mattered if Austin Eckler was in there from a run defense standpoint. Maybe he would have been a bigger threat out of the backfield as a pass catcher, but teams just do not run on the Titans. But, on the flip side, I thought Arden Key obviously cooled off a little bit. He did draw one big holding penalty on Rashawn Slater, but Rashawn Slater is one of your best left tackles in the NFL. And the difference between Key matched up on Slater and Key matched up on Penning was pretty obvious in this game. So I think, you can throw a little cold water on the Arden Key for Defensive Player of the Year campaign, but I still think he's going to be a really good player for the Titans this year.
In overtime, it was kind of really most of the game quiet. You didn't hear much from DeAndre Hopkins, but he made a couple catches there in overtime, and I know in the second half too. But for you, just what was it that put the Titans over the top in overtime?
Yeah, I mean, getting the 3 and out that first series was huge. And that's where the run defense, being able to get teams in third and long, and the Titans' third down defense was really good in this game as well. So I thought getting that initial 3 and out, giving the offense the ball, I think they got the ball on their own 39-yard line. They were pretty set up to where they only had to get, a couple first downs to really start to approach field goal range. And, Hopkins comes up huge with some plays there. He was quiet early in the game. Obviously, didn't practice all week with the ankle issue. Was able to get on the field, but the catches that he did make were super impactful, big time plays for the Titans. And I felt like he was a key piece for them in overtime, kind of getting that drive into Nick Folk's range. And hey, Nick Folk has been a hero for the Titans so far. I mean, perfect on the season. And I don't know that any of his kicks have gotten more than like a yard or two off of dead center so far. I mean, there's been, from the time the ball hits his foot, there's been almost no sweating on field goals, which is a welcome change for Titans fans this year.
Yeah, he's the offensive MVP so far this year, the way it's looking.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this weekend they'll play the Browns. They'll be that's their next opponent at Cleveland, which Cleveland has not played their second game. Like I said, we're recording this middle of the day on a Monday. The Browns are playing on Monday Night Football. Just what some initial thoughts going into that matchup?
My first thought goes straight to what are they going to do with Myles Garrett, because that has the potential to absolutely wreck the Titans offense. Because we know right now, and Hubbard's held up okay. at right tackle, better than I thought so far, although he's had his own moments. But Dillard is a problem at left tackle. I don't think you like the matchup of Hubbard versus Myles Garrett or Dillard versus Myles Garrett. So you're going to have to help to his side pretty consistently. And, Garrett's one of those players that even if you are helping, that always doesn't do the trick. So that's my initial thought is concern over what they do with Myles Garrett. But then on the flip side, it's going to be a great matchup between that Browns running game and the Browns, very strong, very steady offensive line, especially as run blockers against that elite Titans pass rush and Titans, run defense up front. That war in the trenches when Cleveland has the ball is going to be super interesting to watch. And then you've got all kinds of other interesting tidbits to this, right? Jim Schwartz, the Browns defensive coordinator, coaching against his team that he spent the last 2 years with. And on the flip side, Tim Kelly and Mike Vrabel against Deshaun Watson, who, they both have good relationships with and coached in Houston at times. So I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. And it's a game that, to me, it's going to be another good litmus test because the Titans have played two pretty good teams, or at least teams that I expect to be pretty good this year. And I think the Browns will be another one. And if you can go 2-1 with two of those games on the road against those three to start the season, you're really setting yourself up to be in contention this season. Because if you look at the back half of this Titans schedule, it gets a lot easier down the stretch, and there's a potential to get hot and go on a run into the playoffs. So they need to survive these first six, but getting this win against the Chargers was a big first step in doing that.
It's going to be interesting. Going to be looking forward to the game against the Browns this Sunday, just keeping up with everything going on with the Titans. And, Mike, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a lot of fun talking Tennessee Titan football with you as well. And if the listeners, viewers, want to catch you out online, where can they find all your work?
Yeah, so all my written content is at paulkohorski.com. I'll have a piece up on Wednesday breaking down the Chargers game and what happened there, kind of the best and worst from that game with some tape nuggets in there as well. And then podcast-wise, Football and Other F Words should be out on Wednesday as well. So go check that out on your favorite podcast feed.
All right, everybody, go check it out. And Mike, once again, I appreciate the time, and I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
And once again, thanks to Mike Herndon for coming on this edition of the Phillip Jordan Show. Appreciate him taking time out coming on the show. Make sure you follow his work, checking out all things Tennessee Titans. And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. We'll be back later in the week to preview this upcoming weekend's games in college football. So be on the lookout for that. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. Podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You can also listen over at the 4-Star Sports Media Network. Check us out on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel. And check out all my written work over at Last Word on college football. Everybody has a great week. Talk to you later in the week. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Phillip Jordan Show. Subscribe to the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch the show over at the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel. Got a question or topic idea? Email the show at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Join us next time for more great football talk.